Hello. I have here a commondreams.org article. Maldives bans all Israeli travelers over genocidal acts in Gaza. Nearly 11,000 Israelis visited the Indian Ocean archipelago nation last year. %30 of their GDP is from tourism. Like Palestine, the Maldives nation last year. Like Palestine, the Maldives is a majority Sunni Muslim nation. There have been numerous well-attended pro-Palestine rallies in the Moldavian capital, Mal, since October. Take a look at this tweet here. Last month, Maldives reaffirmed its intention to join the South African-led genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. It says here, Maldives will thrive without your blood money.
Israéliens bannis des Maldives. C'est désormais impossible pour eux de mettre un pied sur une île des Maldives. Comme vous pouvez le voir, l'affiche est affichée sur les îles aux Maldives. Pas d'Israéli passeport. Tous les Israéliens sont interdits d'accès aux Maldives. Ne voulons pas de votre argent avec du sang dessus. C'est ce qu'il y a écrit sur l'affiche, comme vous pouvez le voir. La censure que vous voyez sur l'écran est seulement là pour cacher un QR code. C'est interdit sur TikTok. Si on scanne le QR code, on peut avoir accès à des vidéos d'enfants palestiniens. Je vais vous passer les détails sur TikTok, donc je vais me passer de vous dire ce qu'il y a sur les vidéos. Donc voilà. Que pensez-vous de cette interdiction des Maldives? Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est justifié ou vous ne pensez pas du tout? Dites-moi dans les commentaires ce que vous en pensez et si vous aimez toujours autant les Maldives ou non.
The Moldavian government said that such deliberate aggression and genocidal acts targeted against civilians are in gross violation of international humanitarian law, responding to last month's massacre of dozens of Palestinian refugees in a Rafah tent encampment, and a wider Israeli assault on Gaza's southernmost city. Now, it's very important to note that the population of Rafah before the evacuation south was 275,000 people. With the evacuations, it ballooned up to 1.5 million people. Within days of scaling their war into Rafah, over 600,000 people fled rather quickly. That number is a lot higher now, which we will get into. But it must be terrifying because there is nothing but rubble and soldiers and war. There is no place safe to go, nowhere to go that's shelter. There will be no shelter. It is why other states are refusing to take Palestinian refugees in, because they know Israel would not stop at a border and would not stop at anything to get those Palestinians. It is almost like they are property now of the Israelis. We have thousands of Palestinians still in the West Bank that live in Gaza that are stuck in the West Bank still. What are they to do? They have no alternative besides wait out a war that's ending lives. This isn't the first time the Maldives has banned Israeli travelers. The country's government ended the previous ban in the early 1990s with an eye toward normalizing relations with Tel Aviv. However, normalization efforts were abandoned following the 2012 coup that ousted their president Mohammed Nasheed. Nearly 11,000 Israelis visited the country last year, so it's rather impressive stance. Have countries saying that they do not want tourism blood money of Israelis. Same should be said of Russia in the same breath. No one should be taking the blood money from the Russian Federation. Israel, though, this is going to catch up. Stand against genocide. Boycott Israel, sanction Israel, ban Israeli passports is what they are asking. Israel is a pariah nation committing genocide. We don't want your money with blood on it. See. Pretty radical stance. But they did have bans on passports for years before this in the 90s, so that's also interesting. So they just over the blood and death and suffering, torture. It is torture. Very torturous. You make 1 million people walk one way through rubble, through nothing, nowhere to stop. This is their trail of tears. We have a great number of people that are fleeing Rafah, that originally went there for shelter because they were told to go there for shelter by the Israeli Defense Force, IDF. Now they were telling people with leaflets and on drones, speakers, to evacuate, leave Rafah. Anyone that stays behind Rafah now is considered an enemy combatant. Whatever arbitrary timeline that Israel gave people in Rafah, after that time has passed, Israel will consider everybody remaining an enemy combatant. Not only that, but there is a formula there is actual math to how many casualties, how many innocent bystanders the IDF is willing to, how many innocent bystanders they're willing to kill to get, let's say, a Hamas commander. So you start talking about entire groups, brigades of Hamas. You start getting into very huge numbers of innocent bystanders that the IDF, using their AI program, is going to do. Oh, what is the AI program? Lavender. AI program, codename Lavender. So if you're around somebody that you know that is Hamas, you know that the risk of associating being around them is great. Because if they say that there's 4 battalions of Hamas left, and they're able to liquidate thousands of innocent casualties to get to those Hamas personnel, we're going to see another tens of thousands of people killed, especially now that you have all these people that are leaving, going back into Han Yunis, where everything's just covered in sewage. It is horrific, the amount of... Oh, that's the next article, isn't it? Conditions unspeakable as Israeli onslaught forces over 1 million to flee Rafah. Public health concerns are beyond crisis levels. More than 1 million people, 1 million Palestinians have fled Rafah as the city comes under a continued Israeli assault. Now here is Rafah. People are heading Khan Yunis, leaving on foot. There is no donkeys, there is no vehicles, there's no gas, no fuel, no hospitals, no food, no water. People are being starved out. People are fighting through attrition. In this war of attrition, Palestinians only suffer the longer this continues. With this latest ceasefire, it doesn't matter if President forces or says Hamas must take this deal. Israel isn't going to go along with any ceasefire themselves. So even if Hamas approves this 3-phase peace plan, it's not going to matter, because it's going to be vetoed. Whatever is going to be the prime minister can do in Israel to any laws enacting humanitarian purposes in Gaza, in the West Bank. We have all these people here going through rubble, going through, probably filled with dead people, seeing sewage, rotten garbage, living in filth and squalor. But it wasn't that way to begin with. Water was turned off. When roads were damaged, buildings collapsed, and bulldozers went all around the area, taking down shelter, taking down safety, buildings, concrete buildings, and pushing all the rubble aside. Do you think the IDF is searching through rubble for people that are missing? There are over 10,000 missing Palestinians right now. Do you think the IDF is searching through rubble for survivors? Not even talking about bodies. We're talking about people that have been surviving under the rubble for days, being pulled out. There's still a chance to save these people, and instead the IDF uses their war bulldozers to just completely obliterate the countryside and everything in it. It is far past the point of no return for Israel. This is what they chose. They chose genocide. They chose mass death. Their enemy is not the people of Palestine, not Gaza, the Palestinians of Gaza. But what else is there? If Palestinians largely make up Hamas, but Hamas is not an authoritarian figure, at least as far as I can recall. Hamas should not and will not be an authority in Gaza. That would be probably very detrimental to any sort of peace plan proposed by any president. Now we have 1 million people fleeing here. These blocks down here in the southern area as Israel, the IDF, takes more control of the Egyptian border, more people are going to leave. There are bombings, there are rockets, there are gunshots, tank shelling, you name it. It's popping off, and Rafah is going to be a death trap. All because of an AI program that Israel is using, codename Lavender. They're going to be able to generate enough targets and say, hey, these innocent casualties are going to be worth it in the end because we're going to get more Hamas commanders, more Hamas militants. And anybody around them supports Hamas, even if it is their family unknowing supporting. It is barbaric. We continue. Was passport bans, AI, which I've covered before, codename Lavender. Conditions unspeakable as Israeli onslaught forces over 1 million to flee Rafah. Public health concerns are beyond crisis levels. And here's forcing many to shelter in badly damaged buildings in Han Yunis because shelter impossible, no water, no running water, no running sewer, sewage. Sewage is everywhere. These buildings that still stand have sewage running out of them. The ground is pumped, the ground has sewage coming out of it, flooding the areas, flooding the tents. Flooding areas, people are trying to seek shelter. The assault on Rafah, a city in the southern Gaza Strip, has left the displaced in unspeakable conditions. The United Nations Relief Works Agency for UNRWA for Palestinian refugees in the Near East said on social media. Approximately 1.7 million displaced people are now in Han Yunis and Gaza middle areas. So again, this area $275,000 people. This population was 275,000 people. With the refugees, with the people being forced to evacuate south, that number went up to over 1.5 million. Now 1 million have fled Rafah. There should be 500,000 remaining. Unknowing how many more are planning to make this dangerous trek. But is it more dangerous than being around an area that Israel is going to focus all of their bombing? 1 million Palestinians are afraid and decided to go back to Han Yunis in the middle of Gaza. It's this is UNRWA. Forced displacement has pushed over 1 million people away from Rafah. Thousands of families now shelter in damaged and destroyed facilities in Han Yunis, where UNRWA keeps providing essential services despite increasing challenges. Conditions are unspeakable. Han Yunis, which saw sustained fighting earlier in the war, still does not appear to be a safe zone. Israeli military vehicles entered the city in recent hours after advancing to two towns just east of Han Yunis with heavy gunfire and artillery shelling. Many of the people fleeing Rafah are having to move for at least the second time during the war. Roughly 1 million Palestinians who have been displaced elsewhere had gone to Rafah for refuge earlier in the war. Before the war, Rafah's population was about 275,000 people, but the government reached a population of 1.4 million by February, as Israel ordered Palestinians to move there from northern Gaza. This meant squeezing more than half of Gaza's pre-war population of 2.3 million people into one governorate. More than 18,500 pregnant women have been forced to leave Rafah, and there are over 180 women that are still giving birth in Gaza every day. Pregnant women in Gaza are living in an unrelenting nightmare. After successful operations last month, Israel now controls the entire Gaza-Egypt border. Humanitarian corridors are shut down. The mass displacement for Rafah continued as the Biden administration sought to arrange a ceasefire after being pressured for months to end its military support for Israel's onslaught. President Joe Biden called for an end to the war on Friday and backed a roadmap to a deal which drew praise from Palestinian defenders. The Council on American-Islamic Relations called it long overdue and a positive step, as well as criticism that it did not address the root causes of the conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Monday that the deal would not stop the war, which would not end until total victory had been achieved. So it doesn't matter what Hamas and President Biden, it doesn't matter because Netanyahu, Israel is not going to pull back. They're not going to stop. They're not going to slow it down. They're only going to get in better positioning. They're only going to torture these people. This is funny to them. These people's lives is suffering. It's a joke to Israelis. I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of IDF soldiers and citizens in Israel mocking these tortured people. Either they're not seeing reality of this war, or they are aware of it, and even worse, they don't care. It is horrific. It's only getting worse every hour. Instead of every day, it's getting worse every hour. People are dying in great numbers. Babies are suffering. Children are starving. And this war is not slowing down. Israel is just getting into a better position. Four more hostages found dead, Israel says. The Israeli military on Monday confirmed the deaths of four more hostages held by Hamas, including three older men seen in a Hamas video begging for their release. 4 men died together in the southern city of Khan Yunis when Israel was operating there. The cause of death was not immediately known. Hamas claimed in May that Hopewell had died after being wounded in an Israeli airstrike, but provided no evidence. On October 7th, Hamas took some 250 hostages back to Gaza. Of some 130 remaining in the strip, about 85 are believed to still be alive. Now let's take a look at the numbers. Killed. At least 36,439 people in Gaza. More than 15,000 children killed. Injured, 82,627. Missing, more than 10,000. Again, there's that missing point again, that tanks and the military bulldozers that they're using, they're not bothering to check for survivors or remains. So that missing could be seen a lot less if Israel would just check for bodies, survivors, before bulldozing all of them into a giant heap. In the occupied West Bank, 523 people were killed, including more than 132 children and over 5,000 injured. Not to mention there's thousands arrested and detained, and there are thousands more that are stuck in the West Bank that live in Gaza but work in the West Bank. And since the war, they're not able to get back home. And if they were to get back home, they have no home to get back to because much of Gaza is completely obliterated. Israel. 1,139 people killed October 7th. Nowhere it's safe to go. 15 people are every hour in Gaza. 15 people are killed. 6 are children. 35 people are injured. 42 bombs are dropped, and 12 buildings are destroyed every hour in Gaza. Over 100 journalists have been killed. Hundreds of medical workers have been killed. Over 500 Israeli soldiers have been killed. So there was 134 remain captive. There's 4 that are now announced as deceased. So 130 remain captive. This is not going to end because of foreign relations. The only way this is going to end is Netanyahu steps down, accepts his fate, and have Israel try to just do something right. I don't mean right, I mean ethical. It doesn't, the hatred is too great that they can't, even in the face of their own people dying, still, their own people resisting, their own people refusing military service, Israelis that are protesting in Tel Aviv and other places to not only bring them home but to end the war. The people that have seen enough, they can't bear that the blood is spilled in their names more and more. This is Here we go. Here we go. Han Yunis, population of 430,000, now probably 1.8 million. It's such dramatic influx of people from one area to the other, back again. Again, this is their trail of tears. They are being bombed, being shot at, sniped, drones are flying around. Also, drones have speakers, and they are luring people out to the sounds of children crying into sniper fire. There are unspeakable acts of aggression, of war, of inhumanity that is occurring. And now we have another 1 million people back in Khan Yunis. It's only going to get worse from here as IDF spreads them out. They have only corridors that are bulldozed around to walk through, so they have no place to hide or shelter when if the IDF bombs their positions as they walk miles and miles and miles and miles. For what? Safety. To escape the war that's coming to the south. As they bulldoze more and more buildings, more and more paths for their tanks and their attempt to surround Rafah, which they correctly have already done. Now what? Where does this end? What is total victory when it comes to the IDF? What is their end game here? If the hostages are what they are aiming for, as poor choice of words, if 4 died, if releasing the hostages is their main goal, will they be bombing and striking the areas where they believe their hostages remain? Do they know if Hamas is putting these hostages into harm's way, into the bomb's path, knowing that this area is going to be attacked, leaving hostages behind? There might be more hostages dead than previously estimated or known, and that's very sad. And any hostage, especially these 4, is going to just escalate further in Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And if you're just now joining, I thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. It helps me immensely. Keeps me motivated in making videos regarding One Great Earth, this channel. I believe that is all I have for today. I thank you for joining me. Free Palestine. Take care.